Connolly. I'm a EU Programme Manager here at Limerick City and County Council. First off, I just want to say thanks very much, Karen, for the chance to speak to the group here. It's always good to explain to people what we're doing in Limerick and also to get feedback on it, because no matter how good we think our processes are, that there's always room for improvement. I suppose that's at the core of what innovation is, really. Just to tell you a little bit about Limerick. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we're on the west of the west of Europe. So Ireland being the most westerly EU country. Limerick's not quite the most westerly city. Galway beats us on that one. But we're the third largest city in Ireland in the Republic, after Dublin and Cork. We have about 194,000 people in the city and county, with about 94,000 in the city, and we're located just on the mouth of the River Shannon, which is the longest river in the British Isles. And of course, being I think maybe our Swedish colleagues here might recognise, but being a river-based city, we were founded by the Vikings about 1,000 years ago. So, if this will work here, there we go. So, in terms of our digital leaders network, in a moment I'll go into what it is exactly. But before I do that, I just want to tell you how it came about. My former boss, Dr. Mihai Varluca, who was head of digital strategy and EU programs in the council, he's just moved on now to the national level, to one of the government departments. But this was largely his vision and his effort that led to the Digital Leaders Network and the different outcomes that have come about as a result of it. Back at the time it was founded, two aspects were feeding into it. The first was that the city and county councils were merged in Limerick. So we had a separate city council and we had a separate county council, to the point where you could walk from one to the other, and suddenly who you apply for planning permission, who you pay your car tax to, would change. So that happened in 2014, that merger. And as a result, there were real IT challenges, because once you put two large entities together, you have different email systems, different CRM systems, you have different websites, different internal processes. So this real need arose to figure out, okay, what are the best tools, and did we just want to be at the mercy of circumstance, or did we want to find a real thought through way of deciding what tools the council would use and how that would develop? Also the second aspect that led to it was that the Limerick used to be, and to some extent still is, a headquarters for Dell. Now Dell shut its main plant in 2006, and that left a big hole in the economy of Limerick. Basically, Dell employed about I think it was about 6,000 people. So if you remember, I said the population of the city was 94,000. So that's quite a hit that the economy took. But as the city recovered, we're quite lucky in that a lot of the expertise that Dell brought to the city remained. And so the Digital Leaders Network really came about from wanting to take advantage of that pool of expertise that was out there. So in terms of the Digital Leaders Network, what is it? What does it do? I think others here have mentioned the quadruple helix. It's very much built along those lines. So it was established in 2016, and it's an open network. I suppose there's members do sign an NDA, but at the same time, anybody can join and anyone can be invited to join. So it's kind of this nice mix between an open forum to discuss things, but also knowing that what you discuss is going to be protected. So that was an important part of setting that up. Now there's 27 members currently, and so in line with the quadruple helix concept, they come from very different sectors of society and the economy across Limerick. So for example, we have the Limerick Clear Energy Agency, we have the 3 large third-level educational institutes, the Institute of Technology, Mary Immaculate, and the University of Limerick. With civil society, we have the development organisations, the Pole Partnership, and then we have some civil groups such as the Health Service Executive representing the University Hospitals Group. We have the Gardaí, and then finally we have large local industries such as General Motors and Dell, who I mentioned previously. So in terms of the motivation, so I suppose the push was the merger of the councils and this pool of expertise that existed in the city, but the pull factors were very much the economic circumstances of the country. So around 2016, we were out of the recovery really from the 2008 crisis, and the numbers were looking good, particularly for the digital economy. It's worth about €20 billion to Ireland, and as you can see there on the digital economy and social index ranking, which is an EU ranking, we come quite high. We're 7th there, but right next to Estonia and Luxembourg, so quite a good position, we feel. In terms of some of our stats for the country, so social media is used by over 70% of Irish enterprises. 2/3 of large enterprises conduct sales electronically, and 4 out of 5 enterprises have a website in Ireland. Now I'm going to be very interested in the 2020-2021 figures, because I think we've really seen an acceleration of that trend as more and more businesses have had to move online. But in the background, Ireland is one of the youngest populations in Europe. So we do associate with digital mobility, digital capability, with the age profile of the country, and I think that is very much reflected in our economy in terms of the types of companies that are in Ireland. Yeah, so as I said, we have the youngest population in Europe, but 1/3 under 25 years of age. And then in terms of our share of 30 to 34-year-olds with a 3rd level qualification, it's 53.5%. So over half our working age population have 3rd level qualifications, while the EU average is 40%. So we're doing quite well on that. So these were the pull factors. As you can see, it's almost a question of why would you set up a digital leaders network? Why would you not set up a digital leaders network? Because really all the circumstances are there to align to align the goals of the city with what is happening in the broader economic and societal environment. So there was another motivation that came along, actually, well, rather a tool than a motivation. In 2016, we were part of an URBACT project called TechTown. So TechTown ended in 2017, but as part of an URBACT, you have to set up an URBACT local group, and this correlated nicely with setting up the Digital Leaders Network. And really the goal of that project was to explore how small and medium-sized cities could maximize job creation potential of the digital economy. And as I said, I suppose after Dell left in 2006, it was a huge blow. And even in 2016, economy of Limerick actually was really starting to take off at that point, but we'd learned the lesson that we didn't want that to happen again. We didn't want everybody working for one company. We wanted diverse skills in the digital economy. So using this Arab Act, we worked with local stakeholders. We developed the Digital Leaders Network, and then we worked together to create an integrated action plan. So for those of you who are familiar with Arab Acts, they're quite nice projects and really nice grants for doing your stakeholder co-creation activities. And really, we found the process just really ideal for creating this Digital Leaders Network and this integrated action plan, because it has this stepped process of draft roadmaps, draft action plans, local action plans, and you build up to the full integrated action plan. So once we had our Digital Leaders Network functioning and set up, obviously it needed aims, and the aims, of course, were related to what needed to be achieved in Tech Town and what was needed for the broader city. So the aims are quite broad in terms of defining, initiating, implementing and reviewing projects, identifying current and future capabilities, identifying regional skills needs. There was an interesting conversation at a meeting about 6 months ago where literally you have somebody from General Motors, I think it was, or it could have been Dell. It was Dell actually, sitting there talking about a skill that they really needed, while somebody from the Limerick Clare Education and Training Board said, "Oh, okay, we can start developing a course to train people up in that skill." So really, this is the power of a network like this, that you can see a need and you can see somebody with a solution, and they're in the same room together having that conversation. And I guess that pulls me on to the main aim of the network, which is to collaborate in cross-organizational activities. So it's not just funding proposals, but in generating new innovations and new ideas. So actually, one example I might give from that also is that the Hunt Museum, which is one of the main museums in the city, if you get a chance to come to Limerick, I really recommend going there. It's quite a unique collection of artifacts put together by a private collector. But Limerick has recently launched a new brand. It's called the Edge and Embrace brand, and Jill, as part of the Digital Leaders Network, was approached to become a brand ambassador, and indeed some other members of it were approached to become brand ambassadors. And really, through that, you start embedding the local community and local actors in the work of the council. So since its inception, there's been a few results to show how it's been successful. The first example would be the Limerick Digital Strategy. So this strategy takes us up to 2020. It's quite timely. It's time for it now to be updated. But a lot of what you're about to see came from that digital strategy. As I said, we had an integrated action plan from the Arab Act project, and that very much provided the foundations for creating the digital strategy. And it really allowed us to map out those needs of the council, but also the needs of the city and the needs of the wider community. So the Digital Leaders Network allowed us to not just look at our own needs, but the needs of the city and of the county. Again, this was built into our 2030 economic and spatial plan. So you can see some of the pillars there in terms of engagement and participation. I can show you some tools around that we're currently using. Also around data and analytics, we wanted to make our data freely available, publicly available. I think this is a core part of being a smart city. And we wanted to improve our services and really transform our services, because when you're merging a city and county council, while a lot of it is about merging departments and merging people, as I said earlier, it's about merging technologies. So while you're going through that process, why not take the opportunity to improve the technologies that you're using? So some of the outcomes, so these next slides, they're not too colorful, but it's mainly a list of what we've been doing. So first off there, you can see My Point. I'll talk a little bit about this in a future slide. This was launched last year, and now it's pretty invaluable for continuing our work at the council. Limerick.ie has been a huge success. If you're in the background at this meeting now, if you go and Google Limerick, Limerick.ie is one of the first sites that will come up. If you're looking for information, if you Google Limerick Council, Limerick.ie will come up. If you Google business in Limerick, Limerick.ie will come up. So the idea of this platform was to try and centralize everything about Limerick, to give Limerick an identity online, so that when you're trying to find out information about the city, that there is one central source. And this was co-developed with members of the Digital Leaders Network. So there was some back and forth with them. You know, they tweaked aspects around how businesses should be displayed, how civil society groups are displayed, what the user interface should look like. So it was very much a hands-on process. And as a result, like it has 3 million unique visitors to date. It gets about 1 million visitors a year. And that's people who are coming to the city. When I first moved to Limerick, when I first got my job at Limerick City and County Council, Limerick.ie was the place I went to find out information about the city and about what was going on. So that has been hugely successful. It was also very important in the rebranding of the city. So I suppose Irish speakers and Irish participants in this, Irish participants in this meeting will understand that Limerick had a very bad reputation for quite a long time, and that now is largely gone. Limerick is seen in a much more positive light. It's seen now as an attractive place to live, and the Limerick.ie website was quite transformative in that happening, because for once, instead of Googling Limerick and you would go to negative stories about the city that were in the news, because you know there was a bit of Limerick bashing that would go on, you're suddenly taken to a place where it's Limerick people talking about Limerick and about what's happening in Limerick and what's going on in Limerick and what Limerick is really like. So that's one aspect or one output of the Leaders Network that's been really positive. We've developed other things such as the community website. So within that Limerick.ie umbrella, there are community websites. And as a data-driven network, obviously we've been pushing for the regular economic reports, which are fed back to the Leaders Network. And also other technological items such as the invasive species app, which was an idea that came from the Digital Leaders Network to try and take control of, for example, Japanese knotweed and hogweed and other things like that, because it's quite costly for the council to try and find these invasive species. But with the app, our citizens are able to report their locations to us. In terms of data, one success has been Insight Limerick. We're in the process of updating this at the moment through the City Exchange project. To give you an idea of what it shows, I've put 2 graphs there. So I think the first and second one, the first one shows a really nice example of, well, actually not nice, it's about COVID-19, but it showed what happened to footfall in the city centre during COVID-19. And you can see there it dropped from 14,000 a week to 2,000. Quite a dramatic drop, as you can see, and obviously the impact that it's had on businesses. Data like this helps us to make informed decision making. So when it comes to decisions such as what about business rates in the city, you know, should they be suspended or not, or what impact is that going to have? You can really see here the evidence for the necessity of that measure and of that crisis measure. Then a few other items. We have our light program, which is about moving most of the council activities onto internal activities onto SharePoint. Now we have new project management systems, a CRM system that we use to keep track of council assets, a national service catalogue, which has now been rolled out nationally. So this was started in Limerick City and County Council and developed with the Digital Leaders Network. And now other councils are taking on the service catalogue as a project they want to pursue also. And of course, my favorite item here is the City Exchange project. It's a Horizon 2020 project, and it's about getting areas of the city to produce more energy than they consume. And really, that can't be done without the buy-in from local businesses and local stakeholders. So a large part of that project, or at least the Limerick aspects of that project, were developed through the Digital Leaders Network. So we have 5 buildings in the city centre involved in that, and the largest one was brought on board through the network. It's a LEED gold building and very essential to the project. So I don't think we would have won that Horizon 2020 without the input of members from the Digital Leaders Network. So yeah, so really, I think the success of all this has come to the fore during COVID-19. I know I've heard stories from other councils and from other parts of the country where when COVID hit and people had to work from home, you had servers crashing, people couldn't log in, they weren't able to continue their work, and you had in some cases weeks of delays until work could get back to some level of normality. Not to brag, but we didn't have that problem in Limerick. I know myself, I'm sitting here in Offaly, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from Limerick. And I'm quite lucky here, I've very good broadband locally. But broadband aside, when COVID hit, I was just able to bring home my laptop, log on to the system, clock in and keep working. And most staff in the council who had desk-based jobs were able to do that pretty seamlessly. In terms of other things that, and this is related to the Digital Leaders Network in that they gave the impetus for all these tools and all these systems and for the digital strategy to happen. And if that hadn't happened, I don't think that we would have been prepared for COVID. But we were, because a lot of the technology we needed was in place. So for example, when tourism was hit, we launched a 50 Days of Summer campaign through limerick.ie. So currently, all cities and counties in Ireland have to put together their development plans. And this is a consultative process. So how do you consult with people when you can't meet them? Well, we have the MyPoint system, which was set up last year. So people are able to go online and directly input into the draft development plan at the moment. And through City Exchange, we've developed a virtual room. If you get a chance, I'd suggest Googling Limerick City and Council development plan and taking a look at that virtual room. It's literally a room you can go into and you can drag your mouse and you have presentations and talks and you have areas where you can provide feedback. So this has allowed us to keep working on that despite COVID. And as I mentioned earlier, we're able to monitor our footfall. We're able to see, okay, are people coming back to the city centre? Now, before this week, the city centre had returned to 78% of pre-pandemic levels, compared to Dublin with 50% and Galway at 39%. And the The reason we were able to tell this is because, you know, our sensors on the street, which, you know, can only be put in place if your community agrees to have sensors there, and we were able to tell this information because of the work of the Digital Leaders Network. And there's some other things that have happened, such as planning, which is a core activity of a city and county council. So a lot of our planning has moved online, and that couldn't happen straight away. That managed to happen because it was already in the pipeline. It was about to be rolled out. So when COVID arrived, we were very lucky. We were able to move the planning process online straight away. So again, all this has happened because of this quadruple helix consultative process, and really taking advantage of the talent that's in our city. So very quickly, as I said, our digital strategy is coming to an end. It expires in 2020. So what are we going to do about the future? In some ways, we've kind of refined our thinking in that I suppose a smart city isn't so much about, you know, screens and computers and flying cars and things like that. Really, it's about constant, consistent improving, innovating and bettering people's lives. Somebody recently asked me, you know, what is Smart Limerick? Why can't we see all this technology everywhere? And the simple answer to that is that in some sense, you're not supposed to see the technology. It's the processes that are supposed to improve. It's the system, the decision making, the interactions are all supposed to improve in an almost invisible way, but driven by real data, driven by real needs that you can measure. And this has been very important to us. And I think it's something that it's an ethos, I think, that will continue on into the next strategy. So as I said earlier, we largely developed our last strategy using an URBACT local group. It was so successful, we applied for some URBACTs last year. I'm happy to say we were really successful in 3 of them, but because of the rules, we can only work on 2. But yeah, so it's such a good method. We're doing it twice in 2 other areas now. So one area is health and green space. That is bringing together stakeholders in the city who are looking at creating greener cities and healthier communities. So it's our tidy towns, our mental health groups, our sports and fitness groups, environmental groups, our pollinators, our conservationists, our local business owners again. And they're coming together to form an URBACT local group, and we'll develop an action plan. And we're going to use this action plan to implement green routes around the city, so blue-green routes, so areas of outdoor activity. That's where your mental health can be improved in a measurable way, and improvements can be made based on the data that generates. And so we're very excited about that, particularly now with COVID, as so many activities have to move outdoors, and keeping people healthy is so important. We see this activity as vital to the future of the city. Then in terms of Find Your Greatness, this will help us develop the next digital strategy. So again, it has an URBACT local group, and what we've done is we've actually modified the Digital Leaders Network slightly to include a more branding and marketing element, and this is going to help us work on our action plan there, which will help inform the next digital strategy. So also, I suppose I'll skip through this because I already spoke a little bit about Positive City Exchange. I suppose that's an example of where this Horizon 2020 project that was brought in, as I said, through a lot of consultative work and planning with our network. It's really modifying the type of data that we want to look at. So we started off with the basic stuff such as footfall, road traffic, pedestrian counters around the city, and air quality sensors also. But now we want to look at how are people using energy in the city? How are we going to create a low carbon, energy efficient future? And really this project is helping us identify what sources of data we need to look at for that to happen. So that's, I think that's going to largely influence our next strategy also. And I just really skipped past that last slide. Sorry, doesn't seem to want to stop there. There we go. So finally, just to leave you with this image. So networks and plans and strategies can all seem very abstract at times. But I suppose when you're working at the local government level, these things start to become real. As Mihai, who created the first strategy, once told me, the reason he stayed working in the council for 20 years, even though his skills would have been snapped up in a heartbeat elsewhere, was that the council level is where things happen, where strategies become reality. So that the image you see in front of you is our plan for the Limerick Digital Quarter. And within that red square, so one of the blocks is our positive energy block in the City Exchange project, with Gardens International building, the General Post Office, the Chamber of Commerce and Limerick Youth Services, and Rooney's Auctioneers participating in that project. And then at the other end, so the end where you see the yellow building, that's actually a church. But within that block of buildings, you have the engine, which is part of Innovate Limerick, a collaboration between Enterprise Ireland and the council. And then that's after buying up some of the buildings beside it to expand into an innovation hub just next door. So in a sense, the ideas that people started to have when the Digital Leaders Network was first created, it's now turning into reality. It's turning into something you can physically see within the city. So I think, in a sense, I think that's the marker of the Digital Leaders Network's success, that their ideas are now turning into reality. So, just to say thank you very much for that. And if any of you get a chance to take part in an URBAC project and to start co-creating using that method, I think I'd highly recommend it. So, thanks, Karen.